The phone rang just as I was rinsing the last of the chili from my dinner plate. I glanced at the screen and felt a smile tug at my mouth. Laura. My only daughter. My heart always jumped a little when her name lit up the phone, even after all these years. Dad. How are you holding up? Her voice carried that familiar warmth. That practiced tone that always made my chest ache with both love and loneliness. I settled deeper into the recliner that still smelled faintly of Margaret's lavender lotion. She had read books here every night until the cancer took her. Oh. You know me. Sweetheart. Just finished dinner. About to catch the news. I didn't tell her the chili had been leftovers from 3 nights ago. Or that the house had been too quiet. So quiet. I sometimes whispered out loud. Just to hear a human voice. Are you eating enough? You can always use that grocery app I showed you. I chuckled softly. I am fine. Though I had a little scare yesterday. Forgot the burner under my coffee pot. Good thing I smelled it burning before it got too far. There was a pause. I could picture her frowning. Margaret used to get that same crease between her brows. Dad. Maybe we should talk about getting someone to check on you more regularly. I am managing just fine. Laura. How's San Diego treating you? She sighed. Conference is long. Ethan's been handling the client meetings while I sit through slides about digital marketing trends. But we're fine. We spoke for a few more minutes. She laughed once. But it sounded strained. Finally, she said, I've got to run dinner plans with some investors. Love you. Dad. Love you too. Sweetheart. I heard the click. I started to set the phone down. And then rustling. The call hadn't ended. My thumb froze above the screen. I heard voices. Muffled but clear enough. You see how he's deteriorating? Laura's voice. Sharper now. Stripped of the warmth shed used on me seconds before. He forgot the stove yesterday. What if he burns the house down? My blood turned to ice. Ethan's voice followed. Hold. Matter of fact. It's time for a nursing home. Laura. He's a burden. And you know it. Burden. The word sliced through me like a blade. Laura lowered her voice. But I still heard every syllable. The house is worth almost $1 million now. In Oak Cliff. We could probably get $900,000 easy. With the right buyers. That's exactly what we need. Ethan said, his tone brightening. We put him somewhere decent, doesn't have to be expensive, and finally get that place in Highland Park. The one with the mountain view. And then Laura laughed. Actually laughed. God. Ethan. You should have seen him tonight. So grateful just to hear from me. He has no idea we're planning this. The longer we wait, the more confused he'll get. We should strike while he still trusts us. The phone slipped from my fingers, clattering against the hardwood floor I had laid with my own hands 30 years ago. I sat frozen in the silence that followed, staring at Margaret's photograph on the mantel. Her eyes, forever caught in that smile from our 35th anniversary, seemed to bore into mine. Was it disappointment? A warning? Or the terrible knowledge only the dead can carry? The grandfather. Clock ticked in the hall. Outside, the spring cicadas began their song. My house felt different now, its walls holding their breath, as if they too had heard my daughter's betrayal. Burden. I clenched my weathered hands into fists. These were hands that had built this house board by board, nail by nail. Hands that had paid for Laura's tuition, covered Ethan's debts, worked overtime shifts until my back screamed. And this was my repayment. They were already spending my money. Already mapping out their dream life while I was packed off to some facility like a broken chair. I rose slowly, every bone aching, but not from age, from fury. I walked to the kitchen drawer and pulled out a folder. Margaret had insisted I keep old receipts. Tuition bills. The mortgage statement stamped, paid in full. Proof of everything we had built. Proof of what they were about to steal. I whispered into the dim kitchen. To Margaret's memory. To the woman who had always seen through people's facades. They think I am done. They think I am helpless. But I am not dead yet. And I will not go quietly. The clock ticked on, steady as my heartbeat. Somewhere across the country, my daughter was sipping wine, plotting my exile. Here in Dallas, in the house her mother and I had built from sweat and sacrifice, a different plan was beginning to form. They wanted a burden. I would give them something else entirely. I did not sleep that night. The house was too full of ghosts. Every room echoed with the sound of Margaret's laughter, Laura's childhood footsteps, the music of a life we had once believed unshakable. Now, those same rooms whispered with a single word that would not leave my ears. Burden. I sat at the kitchen table as the hours crept toward dawn. The old folder of receipts and papers spread out before me like an autopsy of my life. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the inked numbers that had defined my sacrifices. The first stack was tuition bills. University of Texas at Austin. 4 years. Nearly $60,000. I could still remember the smell of concrete dust on my clothes after double shifts. Margaret, waiting with a thermos of coffee, while I calculated how many more weekends I'd need to cover Laura's spring semester. You're working yourself to death. Richard, Margaret had said once, her fingers massaging my shoulders as I hunched over the calculator. She's smart enough for anything. ID told her. She deserves better than we had. Margaret had kissed the top of my head, whispering, just don't give her so much that she forgets to be grateful. I should have listened. God help me. I should have listened. My eyes moved to the next stack: wedding invoices. $32,000 for a single day. I had argued. Said we could manage maybe $8,000 if we stretched. But Laura had cried. She wanted her dream wedding. And I had caved. Working weekends, installing hardwood floors for a contractor friend. Cash, under the table. Until my hands bled. I remembered the first dance. Her head against my shoulder. Her voice trembling as she whispered, Daddy, you're the best father in the world. Never forget this. But she had forgotten. Just as she had forgotten the nights. Margaret and I sat up with her when she was sick, sponging her forehead and reading fairy tales to keep her calm. Just as she had forgotten the day she failed her driving test, sobbing in the car. And I took her out for ice cream and promised her shed pass the next time. And Ethan, his failures had become mine to carry. I found the bank statements from 6 years ago, when he lost his banking position for irregularities. They never explained what that meant, but I had understood enough. They had moved in with me just until they got back on their feet. I had paid the bills, bought the groceries, covered their share of utilities without complaint. I told myself, family helped, family. And when Ethan shook my hand at backyard barbecues and called me the most generous man in Texas, I had felt proud, like I was giving Laura a good life through him. But pride is a fragile thing. I turned another page and found the receipt for Ethan's BMW transmission, $3,000. My entire emergency fund wiped out so he could keep driving his luxury car while I made do with my old Ford. They had not even thanked me properly. Just assumed that the old man would cover it. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the photographs Margaret had kept tucked in the folder. Construction shots of the house in 1989. Me and 2 coworkers raising the frame in the Texas heat. Margaret, in a sun hat, bringing us lemonade. Her belly just starting to swell with Laura. That house had been our promise. We had lived on beans and rice, skipped vacations, driven cars held together by duct tape, but we built something that was ours. I had measured every angle, cut every board, nailed every beam with my own hands. I could still hear Margaret laughing when I installed the bay window she wanted, even though we couldn't afford it. Richard, we don't have the money. You want it. You'll have it. I'll make it work. I had made it work. For her. For Laura. For all of us. Now, decades later, my daughter and her husband saw only square footage and dollar signs. Not love. Not sacrifice. Just a house to sell. A burden to remove. The anger inside me was no longer sharp. It was heavy, like iron settling in my chest. A new kind of strength, colder than I'd ever known. I rose from the table and walked upstairs. Laura's old bedroom was still painted, the pale blue she had begged for at 16. Posters of long-forgotten bands still clung to the walls. The little white desk where she had struggled with algebra, built by me to fit perfectly under the window, was gathering dust. Memories pressed in from every corner. But they no longer warmed me. They burned. I stood in the doorway of the master bedroom. Margaret's jewelry box gleamed on the dresser. Her perfume still lingered faintly in the closet. And I heard her voice again, weak from the cancer that had stolen her strength in the end. Promise me you won't let them take advantage of you. Richard. Promise me. I had promised. And I had broken it. But not anymore. I looked at the house not as a home, but as an asset. Square footage. Market value. Liquidity. I saw it now the way Laura and Ethan saw it. And in that cold calculation, I found clarity. They wanted to manage me like property. They wanted to decide my worth. But I was the builder. The deed was mine. The power was mine. The word burden echoed once more. And this time I did not flinch. I whispered into the dark room. To Margaret. To myself. To the house we had built. They think I am a burden. But before this is over, they will learn that I am the storm. By morning, the decision had hardened in me like set concrete. I showered, shaved, and dressed in the charcoal suit Margaret had once insisted I buy for important occasions. At the time, I told her I would never need it. She had smiled knowingly, as if she had seen this very day. The streets of Dallas were already buzzing when I drove into Oak Cliff. Pickup trucks idled at red lights. Businessmen hurried into coffee shops. Mothers shepherded children to school. To them, it was just another weekday. To me, it was the day I stopped being anyone's victim. The law office of Thomas Grant sat in a modest brick building off Jefferson Boulevard. No sleek towers, no glass walls, just the quiet dignity of a man who had made his career helping regular folks like me. Thomas and I had known each other for 30 years. We met through a church fundraiser Margaret used to run. He had helped draft our wills, file our taxes, and, after Margaret's diagnosis, prepare the estate documents we prayed we would not need. Richard, Thomas said warmly as I entered his office. His hair had gone white since I'd last seen him, but his handshake was as steady as ever. Good to see you. Though I wish it were under happier circumstances. I sat down across from him, the leather chair creaking under my weight. I won't waste time. Thomas, I need to know something. My house, the one Margaret and I built. Is there any way Laura and Ethan can touch it? Force me into some home and sell it out from under me? Thomas leaned back, steepling his fingers. Let's start with the basics. Is the title in your name only? Yes. Margaret and I owned it jointly. When she passed, it transferred to me. Then it's simple. They have no claim. No power of attorney. No guardianship. No court order. They cannot make a single decision about your property or your life. Relief should have come with those words. Instead, something sharper took its place. So if I wanted to sell it tomorrow, you could. No one can stop you. I nodded slowly, the plan forming like blueprints in my mind. Thomas studied me for a long moment. Richard, why are you asking me this now? I told him everything. About Laura's phone call, the forgotten hang-up, the words I had overheard that had sliced me open. About Ethan calculating property values, while my daughter laughed about striking before I grew too confused to fight. Thomas did not interrupt. His pen moved silently across a yellow legal pad, but I could see the tightening of his jaw, the way his eyes narrowed with each detail. When I finished, the silence in the office was heavy enough to crush me. Finally, Thomas spoke. I wish I could tell you this is rare. It isn't. Adult children see their parents aging, and they think they can take over. They justify it as safety, responsibility. But often it comes down to money. It's ugly, but it's common. I clenched my fists on the table. They called me a burden, Thomas. A burden. His eyes softened. Then you already know what you need to do. I want to sell, I said firmly. Before they get back from San Diego. I want the money in my account. Safe. Untouchable. I want them to come home to nothing but their own greed staring back at them. Thomas hesitated. That's a major decision. Once you sell, Richard, there's no going back. I built that house with my own hands. I know exactly what I am giving up. But I also know what I am protecting. Margaret made me promise not to let anyone take advantage of me. I broke that promise once. I won't do it again. Thomas nodded slowly, his respect evident. Dallas real estate is booming. Investors are snapping up houses like yours in days, sometimes hours. With the right buyer, you could have it sold and closed within a week. Cash. No contingencies. I exhaled, the weight of decades pressing against me. That fast? That fast, he confirmed. But you'll need a realtor who moves quickly and discreetly. I can give you some names. I rose to leave, the yellow folder of Margaret's careful records clutched in my hand. For the first time in months, maybe years, my steps felt steady. At the door, Thomas called after me. Richard, what you're doing, it isn't just business. It's justice. Remember that when the guilt creeps in? I paused, hand on the knob, and nodded. Justice. As I stepped out into the bright Dallas sun, I realized my life was splitting into two chapters. In one, I was the grateful father, the man who gave and gave until there was nothing left. In the next, I was something else. Not a burden, not a victim. I was the storm that was about to tear their plans apart. The morning after my meeting with Thomas, I found myself staring at a list of names he had scribbled on his legal pad. 3 realtors, each with reputations for speed and discretion. My hand hovered over the phone for a long time before I finally dialed the first. No answer. The second one sounded rushed, distracted, like my house was just another number to hit their quota. The third call was different. Angela Ruiz. A calm, steady voice answered. How can I help you today? My name is Richard Coleman, I said. I was given your number by a lawyer I trust. I am looking to sell my house quickly, as in days, not months. There was no hesitation. Mr. What? Coleman. I specialize in exactly that kind of transaction. Investors, cash offers, no repairs or contingencies. May I ask where the property is? Oak Cliff. Built in '89. About 3,400 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. I heard the quick intake of breath on the other end. Oak Cliff? That area is moving faster than almost anywhere in Dallas. Houses like that don't sit on the market. Would you be willing to meet today? Today works, I said, surprising myself with how firm my voice sounded. By 3 o'clock, Angela was standing in my entryway. Early 40s. Sharp black suit, a leather portfolio tucked under one arm. But it was her eyes that struck me clear, focused. The eyes of someone who saw both value and opportunity. Mr. Coleman, she said, shaking my hand with a firm grip. Before I even look around. Let me tell you something. Investors will line up for a house like this. Original owner, good condition, established neighborhood. It's gold. I stepped back, letting her through. Watching her walk the rooms was like watching someone weigh the years of my life. She ran her hand along the custom oak banister. I'd sanded myself. Admired the crown molding I had cut late into the night. Paused at the bay window where Margaret used to sit with her tea. You did this work yourself? She asked. I was a civil engineer. I believe in building things right the first time. Her smile was genuine. It shows. Buyers pay for that kind of craftsmanship, whether they realize it or not. She opened her tablet, scrolling through recent sales. Comparable properties in this area are closing between 850 and 920. But given the condition, the detail, and the lot size, I would recommend listing at 960. That will catch attention fast but still leave room for investors to feel like they've scored. 960,000. The number made my chest tighten. Laura and Ethan had guessed 900 at most, as if they'd already been counting it in their pockets. I imagined their faces when they found out they hadn't just lost the house, they'd lost more than they ever dreamed. Angela must have read my expression. It's a lot of money, Mr. Coleman. But I can make it happen. I have a group of cash buyers who've been waiting for something exactly like this. They'll move fast. You could be under contract within 48 hours. I nodded slowly. What would you need from me? Clean title, basic disclosures, and access for an inspection. But with cash buyers, the inspection is usually just a formality. No nitpicking over paint or appliances. They want properties they can hold, rent, or flip. This one checks all their boxes. I walked her to the kitchen, my hands resting briefly on the granite counter Margaret had chosen. The sunlight streaming through the window lit the veins of gold running through the stone. For a moment, I saw her there again, smiling as she made coffee. And then I remembered Laura's voice calling me a burden. The memory was enough to steal my heart. Let's do it, I said. Angela's professional mask slipped just enough for excitement to show. Excellent. I'll reach out to my buyers tonight. I expect we'll have an offer by tomorrow. Are you prepared to move quickly if they meet your number? I've already started packing, I told her. She studied me a moment, maybe sensing the weight of what I was leaving behind. Then she closed her tablet and extended her hand again. I'll handle everything. You just be ready for a fresh start. After she left, I sat in Margaret's old reading chair, staring at the sunset through the bay window. For the first time, I looked at the house not as home, but as currency, leverage, freedom. Laura and Ethan thought they were architects of my future, but I was the one drawing the blueprints now. 2 days later, Angela called with the kind of calm excitement only seasoned professionals carry. They want it. Mr. Coleman. Full asking price. 960,000. Cash. They'll close in 7 business days if you're ready. I closed my eyes, letting the number sink in. More money than I had ever seen in one place. More money than Laura and Ethan had been secretly planning to devour. I am ready, I said. My voice was steady, even though my heart hammered like a jackhammer inside my chest. That night, I started the hardest task of all, deciding what to take from the house Margaret and I had built with our hands. I stood in the bedroom, suitcase open on the bed. Margaret's jewelry box was the first thing I placed inside. Inside were her wedding ring, her mother's brooch, the tiny gold locket she used to wear every Sunday. Next went the photo albums, the thick, leather-bound ones Margaret had filled with careful handwriting and dates under every picture. Our wedding, Laura's first birthday, Christmas mornings, vacations we could barely afford but made work anyway. I pulled my old engineering certificates off the wall, the frames dusty from years of neglect. They weren't worth much to anyone else, but they were proof of a life spent building something real, not just scheming. The rest, I left untouched. Furniture, electronics, decorations, they were all weight. The new owners could make of them what they wanted. I whispered into the silence. I am sorry, Margaret. But you'd understand. This house was never for them to take. By dawn, I was already on the phone, calling around Dallas for a furnished apartment. It had to be discreet, quick, month to month. I found a place near White Rock Lake, a modest unit in a senior-friendly complex called Lakeview Arms. Nothing flashy, but clean, with a balcony overlooking the water. The manager, a soft-spoken woman named Mrs. Patel, met me at the office that afternoon. You're in luck, Mr. Coleman. We had a cancellation yesterday. 1 bedroom. Furnished. Available immediately. Perfect. I signed the lease, paying the first month and deposit in cash. $3,000 gone in seconds. I hardly blinked. Back at the house, I moved like a man with a mission. I boxed Margaret's china, wrapped it carefully in newspapers, and delivered it to a small storage unit I'd rented across town. The rest of our belongings I left exactly where they were. I wanted Laura and Ethan to walk into the house and feel the absence, not the mess. But the most important step came late that evening, at a coffee shop off Jefferson Boulevard. I ordered a single espresso and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I searched for something I never thought I'd need. Hidden cameras. Surveillance devices. The search results filled the screen with options: obvious security cameras, bulky machines meant for businesses, sleek gadgets, disguised as everyday objects. After 30 minutes, I found what I wanted. A miniature Wi-Fi camera hidden inside what looked like an ordinary USB charger. Motion activated. 12-hour battery life. Remote viewing through a phone app. $159. I clicked buy now without hesitation, paying the extra for overnight shipping. This was no longer just about protecting myself. It was about witnessing justice with my own eyes. That night, I sat on the porch swing Margaret and I had hung so many summers ago. The spring air carried the smell of fresh-cut grass from the neighbors. For a moment, I let myself imagine Laura as a little girl again, running barefoot through the yard, chasing fireflies while Margaret clapped from the porch. I pressed my palms against my knees, hard, to force the image away. That little girl no longer existed. What remained was a woman who had laughed about sending her father away so she could pocket his life's work. The camera would arrive tomorrow. The locks would be changed the day after that. And then, when Laura and Ethan returned from their trip, they would find a house that no longer belonged to them, no longer even belonged to me. They would find a note. My note. And for the first time in years, it would be my voice, not theirs, controlling what came next. The package arrived the next morning. A small cardboard box left neatly at my doorstep. Inside, nestled in foam, sat the device that would turn my revenge into more than just an idea. The hidden camera looked ordinary, just a white phone charger with a faintly glowing light. I tested it in my kitchen first, plugging it into the wall, opening the app on my phone. The image appeared instantly. Clear. Crisp. I walked across the room, waved my hand, and watched the motion sensor catch it all. Perfect. By afternoon, I was on the phone with a locksmith. Emergency job, I told him. Need every lock in the house changed before the weekend. The man introduced himself as Eddie, a stout fellow with a toolbox and the tired face of someone who had seen everything. He arrived in a white van, no questions asked, and got to work immediately. These are good locks, Eddie said as he unscrewed the brass fixtures Margaret had once picked out. Someone knew what they were doing when they installed them. I smiled faintly. That was me. In less than 2 hours, every door in the house was fitted with sharp, modern deadbolts, silver instead of brass, cold instead of warm. Eddie handed me a ring of new keys. 3 copies for each door. That'll be $450, with the emergency fee, he said. I paid in cash. No trail. When he drove away, the house was silent again, but it no longer felt like mine. The locks didn't sound like the ones I'd turned thousands of times before. Even the click was foreign. But that was the point. I went to the front door and taped an envelope at eye level. The paper felt heavy in my hands, though it contained only a few pages. My handwriting, careful and deliberate, filled the sheets. Dear Laura and Ethan, if you are reading this, it means my plan worked perfectly. I heard your conversation. I heard you call me a burden. I heard you talk about selling this house for $900,000, while you laughed about putting me away like old furniture. So I sold it myself. For $960,000. Cash. The money is in my account now, where it will stay. Untouchable. Your belongings have been packed and delivered to Denver, moving and storage on Jefferson Avenue. You have 30 days to claim them before storage fees begin. I gave you everything I had for 40 years. You repaid me with cruelty, calculation, and betrayal. This house was never yours. It was built by my hands, with your mother's strength beside me, for a family that no longer exists. I am not a burden. I am your father, and you will remember me that way, even if it's the last lesson I give you. Love. Dad. I pressed the envelope flat against the wood, smoothed the tape until I was sure it would not fall. Then I walked back into the living room, taking in the space one final time. Margaret's bay window glowed with the late afternoon light, the same light that had once caught in her hair as she read her novels. I placed the camera in the outlet near the entryway, angled perfectly to capture the moment they discovered the truth. On my phone screen, the live image looked almost unreal, my empty doorway, waiting like a stage before a play. I tested it twice, leaving the frame and re-entering, watching the motion alert buzz my phone each time. It worked flawlessly. Packing the last of my things felt like tearing off a bandage that had been stuck for decades. I folded Margaret's favorite shawl into my suitcase, slipped the family Bible into the side pocket, and closed the zipper. The sound echoed in the empty bedroom. As dusk fell, I stood once more at the threshold of the house I had built. My hand rested on the frame, the wood worn smooth by decades of use. It's done, Margaret. I whispered into the silence. Justice is served. I locked the new deadbolt, slipped the keys into my pocket, and walked out into the night. From my car, I pulled up the camera feed one more time. The envelope was still there, waiting. My phone showed the timestamp, 6:43 p.m. Tomorrow evening, Laura and Ethan would return from San Diego. They would come home expecting to find their grateful old father, waiting with open arms. Instead, they would find a letter taped to the door, a house that no longer belonged to them, and the truth staring back at them in my handwriting. For the first time in years, I felt light, free. They thought they were the ones setting the terms. But tomorrow, the stage would be mine. Friday evening, I sat in my small Lakeview Arms apartment with the phone balanced in my palm, the camera feed glowing against the dim light. The charger cam showed my old front door, the envelope still taped firmly where I had left it. The clock on my wall read 5:05. By my calculations, they should arrive any minute. Laura hated traffic, always made sure to leave her conferences by noon to avoid it. Ethan never drove faster than the speed limit. I had their routines memorized like blueprints. At 5:17, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. My heart pounded as the black SUV rolled into the driveway, sleek and self-satisfied like its owners. I leaned forward in my chair, barely breathing. The driver's side opened. Ethan stepped out, adjusting his blazer, stretching after the long drive. Laura followed, pulling her sunglasses off with a dramatic sigh. Their luggage thudded onto the pavement. They looked casual, relaxed, victorious, like predators returning to a kill they thought belonged to them. Laura dug through her purse, pulling out her keys. She walked to the door with a bounce in her step, slid the brass key into the lock and stopped. It didn't fit. Her smile faltered. She jiggled the key, twisting harder, then pulled it out to check. Tried again. Nothing. That's weird, she muttered, her voice clear through my phone speaker. What is it? Ethan called, dragging the suitcases up the walk. My key's not working. She tried again, rattling the handle. Here. Let me. Ethan took the keys, tested them with growing frustration. The deadbolt refused to budge. He stepped back, his jaw tightening. These aren't our locks. What do you mean they're not our locks? I mean someone changed them. His voice carried an edge now, clipped and dangerous. And it wasn't us. Laura blinked rapidly, her face pale. That's impossible. Dad doesn't even know a locksmith. Clearly. Someone does. Ethan dropped the keys back into her hand. Let's check the back door. I watched through the feed as they disappeared from view. A few minutes later, Ethan returned, dragging his hand through his hair. Back's locked too. Garage remote won't work. Whoever did this, they changed everything. Laura's voice cracked. Then call Dad. Right now. She pulled out her phone, dialing my old landline. I watched her expression shift as the call rang and rang. Then cut off. No voicemail. No connection. Try his cell. Ethan pressed. Laura's face twisted. He doesn't have one. Remember? We talked about getting him one for emergencies? The first tremors of fear rippled across her features. Ethan stepped back, studying the doorframe like a man searching for weakness. His financial mask was slipping, the calm veneer replaced with sharp panic. There's only one explanation. He sold the damn house. Laura shook her head violently. No. He wouldn't. He couldn't. But her voice betrayed her doubt. Ethan's eyes caught the envelope taped at eye level. He ripped it free and shoved it into her trembling hands. Then explain this. She tore it open. My words stared back at her. The silence was deafening. Then, Laura's voice rose into a strangled shriek. He sold the house. He actually sold it. Ethan snatched the letter, scanning it with disbelief. His face darkened. $960,000. He sold it for $960, and he moved the money out of reach. Laura's eyes flooded with tears, mascara streaking down her cheeks. That was supposed to be ours. Our future. How could he do this to us? Our future, Ethan barked, finally losing control. This is your father. If you had handled him better, maybe we wouldn't be standing here like idiots with nowhere to live. Laura's grief twisted into fury. You're the one who said he was a burden. You pushed for the nursing home. Ethan's face reddened. Because it was true. Look what he's done to us. We're homeless. Do you understand? Homeless. Laura shoved him. You promised me stability. You promised me that once we had this house, we'd be secure. His laugh was sharp, bitter. Secure? Laura, I never told you the whole truth. I already borrowed against this house. Quiet loans. Based on its value. Creditors are expecting collateral. And now it's gone. Her scream pierced the quiet street. You did what? I thought it wouldn't matter. We were weeks from selling anyway. But now his voice broke. Now we're ruined. Through my phone, I watched my daughter collapse into a chair that would not be hers tomorrow. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. Ethan stared at the letter, as if trying to will the words to change. They had plotted my exile. They had mocked me as a burden. And now, they sat broken in the living room I had built, their world collapsing from the weight of their greed and lies. I leaned back in my chair at Lakeview Arms, the phone still in my hand, and let out a long breath. The wine bottle on my counter gleamed in the fading light. I poured myself a glass, raised it to Margaret's photo, and whispered, "To you, my love, justice served." The feed kept running, capturing their downfall in real time. But I had seen enough. I turned the camera off. The next morning, the sun over White Rock Lake poured golden light through my modest apartment window. For the first time in years, I woke without the heaviness pressing down on my chest. No demands. No calculations about how much I could sacrifice for someone else's comfort. Just silence, and the knowledge that everything was now mine, secured beyond their reach. At 9 o'clock, I sat across from David Morrison, the private banker at Lone Star Trust and Savings. His office smelled faintly of leather and cedar polish, the kind of space designed to reassure clients that their money was safe. "Mr. Rees. Coleman," he said, sliding a form toward me. "The wire transfer cleared this morning. $960,000. Less closing costs. The funds are fully secured in your new account." The numbers stared back at me, More wealth than I had ever held in my lifetime. Not inheritance. Not luck. The price of years of labor, sleepless nights, double shifts, and calloused hands. I signed the forms, each stroke of the pen cutting another tie to the life my daughter thought she could control. When I left the bank, I did not go back to Oak Cliff. The house no longer belonged to me, and I no longer belonged to it. I drove instead to White Rock Lake, parked near the walking trail, and carried a small picnic basket Margaret had loved. Inside was her favorite shawl and a bottle of Bordeaux we had saved for a special occasion. This was the occasion. I spread the shawl across a bench overlooking the water. The spring air carried the scent of blooming dogwoods. Children laughed in the distance, chasing each other down the trail. I poured myself a glass of wine, raised it to the lake, and whispered, "To you, Margaret." To promises kept at last. The wine was rich and dark, tasting of freedom. My phone buzzed on the bench beside me. Unknown number. I let it ring until it went silent. Minutes later, another text came through, and another. Laura, no doubt, clawing at any thread she could reach. I powered the phone off completely. For the first time since Margaret's death, I had no reason to feel guilt. I had honored her final words. I had refused to be used. That evening, I returned to my apartment and unpacked slowly, deliberately. Margaret's jewelry box found a home on the dresser. Our wedding photo sat on the nightstand. Her favorite cookbook rested on the small kitchen counter. With each placement, the apartment grew warmer, less like a temporary hideout, and more like a beginning. I cooked a simple dinner for myself, steak and potatoes, the way Margaret had always liked them. Afterward, I sat on the balcony overlooking the lake, watching the city lights shimmer in the distance. They had called me a burden, but the truth was simple. The real burden had been theirs all along. Their greed, their entitlement, their endless hunger for what they had not earned. And, in the end, it had devoured them. I imagined Laura and Ethan sitting in that house, surrounded by furniture they would soon lose, arguing over blame as creditors circled closer. I did not smile. I did not gloat. Justice had been served, but it was bitter, not sweet. Still, I felt peace. As the night deepened, I opened my notebook and began to write. Not a will, not financial records, just a letter, addressed to no one in particular. A lesson carved from decades of sacrifice. Family is not built on blood alone. I wrote. It is built on gratitude, on respect, on love, returned in kind. Wealth can be earned, houses can be built, but without those things, family is nothing but strangers under the same roof. If your children see you as a bank account, they are not your children. If they see you as a burden, they do not deserve your strength. Never be afraid to walk away from those who would use you. Better a small room filled with peace than a mansion filled with betrayal. I set the pen down and read the words twice. They rang true. When I finally closed the notebook, I looked again at Margaret's photo, resting against the lamp by my bed. Her smile was still there, the same one she had worn every day of our 35 years together. And for the first time since she left, I felt I had earned that smile again. I whispered softly into the quiet room. It's over, Margaret. They won't hurt me anymore. Outside, the lake glimmered under the moonlight, and the night felt lighter, freer, as if the world itself approved. I was not anyone's burden. I was my own man again. And I had a future to live.